Hello, everybody. Just wanted to finish up modern biological trait theories, and we're just going to go through the last little bit of this and then go into the positivist, or no, the psychological positivism. Biological positivism is basically trait theory. Trait theory and positivism are used quite synonymously. Uh, the biology, our traits, our inherent traits as human beings, that's uh, biological in origin. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about these. So we're just going to finish up this area, view a video in between, and then move on to psychological trait theories from there. All right, so the first one, I don't know if we got to this last day. I'm unsure of whether we did get this far or not, but I'll just go over it again just in case. It's arousal theory. So this is basically that high-risk activities cause arousal, stimulation, and some people have an inherent need for increased arousal, right? That it's a trait, it's a genetic link that makes some people seek out high-risk activities, basically like thrill-seeking behavior. That's exactly what we're talking about here. So too much arousal can cause anxiety, too little results in boredom, and everybody sort of plays within that range of emotions and behaviors there, right? So we all need some arousal, right? Because anybody's going to get bored, but some people just have a higher threshold for where boredom sets in. So they have to have more increased arousal on an ongoing basis to satisfy that need to keep from being bored, right? And those people are considered sensation seekers, um, and are more likely then to be involved in criminal activity. So remember we talked about like aggression from passivity, somebody who's very passive to somebody who's very aggressive. Same sort of thing here. We go from boredom to anxiety, and everybody sort of falls within a balance on that threshold. People that tend to be more on the higher arousal end and tend to get bored more easily tend to be more involved with criminal activity by seeking out thrill-seeking behaviors, so sensation seekers. Um, so the level of arousal may be a result of brain chemistry, number of brain cells with neurotransmitter receptor sites. There's been a study that links it to heart rate. There's been a number of studies around this area, and they link it as a byproduct to criminal activity. A lot of what arousal theories really looked at is looking at addictions to stimulant drugs. So people that are addicted to cocaine, and some people get addicted to cocaine very quickly, where others can be casual users for a long time. And arousal theory tries to explain that link. All right, so cocaine, people who drink a lot of caffeine tend to need a base level of arousal that's a little bit higher than people that tend not to use caffeine, right? And then there's a natural biological dependency that does arise and influence it from there. But when they start talking about initial use, that's a good one. Speaking of which, I have my coffee right here. As this is in the morning, I'm recording this. So that's basically what arousal theory is. People that tend to seek out thrills, thrill seekers, are more likely to then be involved in criminal activity, put themselves in more high risk situations. So then research on genetics. So there was the XYY theory, and most of you probably don't remember this, but there was a lot of talk about genetic research and this XYY theory that produced hypermasculinity. So people would have increased testosterone levels, and they made a genetic link to those increased testosterone levels. So it was considered a rare condition, 1 per 1,000 men. Um, uh, they had delayed mental maturation as probably a byproduct of the hypermasculinity. They were more involved with bullying. They tended to be more involved with criminal behavior. and again, not a direct link to criminal behavior, but they tended to be overrepresented in criminal behavior. And the idea was that this extra chromosome created this situation. So we'll look at the Italian courts in the next little video that I've attached here. We'll look at how the Italian courts use this, that the person was basically predisposed to criminal activity and used as a mitigating factor at sentencing. So remember that. So mitigating factor means that we're going to reduce the sentence because this person can't be held fully responsible because of something. So similar to what we saw in the Twinkie defense, this person can't be held totally responsible because of something. So we're going to look at aggravating and mitigating factors as one of the questions that we're going to look at for this week. So keep this one in mind, and this video that's attached that we're going to watch, or that's going to come up next, because you really want to consider at what point do we take people's genetic makeup and their predisposition to criminality and use that as a mitigating factor, therefore reducing the sentence, reducing their culpability because they couldn't help the crime, compared to using things like psychopathy, where it actually increases a person's sentence as an aggravating factor. So a person can't help crime, so we should actually incarcerate them longer and call them a dangerous offender and maybe put them away in jail for life based on the same information. And different courts around the world have used it quite differently. So I'll leave that. That's going to be one of the questions that we're going to be looking at for the discussion post this week. The other genetic part here is parental deviance. So there's a Cambridge Youth Survey, and Cambridge Youth Survey was a very interesting study because it was a longitudinal research study that looked at a number of children in Cambridge from birth or just shortly after birth, looked at birth weight, looked at their nutrition habits, the parenting style of the parents, the relative affluence, were they poor, were they doing okay, all these different things, later parental splits, so divorces, and linked all these different things and studied them through the life course, right? So how did these people end up when they became adults, right? Were they involved with crime, were they weren't involved with crime? And they also looked at health outcomes, like did they have heart disease, did they have, all these sorts of other things, and tried to do a real clear study, or as clear as possible on a really long-term study, trying to make links or what would predispose people to certain types of behaviors later on in life, or later overall health outcomes, assuming criminality would be a negative health outcome later on in life. So they found that a father's criminality was linked, quite strongly related to their son's delinquency. Not necessarily to their daughter's delinquency, but definitely to their son's delinquency. Delinquency being measured as being involved in delinquent behavior later on in life. And they found that bullying behavior, so the parental style, as well as past records of the parents, was very much intergenerational. So parents that used a bullying style of parenting tended to produce schoolyard bullies, basically, right? So these are some of the research on genetics, so that would show a genetic link, that there's and again, they made a genetic link around it, or assume that there could be a genetic link there. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a genetic link. We'll look at learned behavior later on in 2 weeks, and that would actually explain these from an entirely different perspective. All right, so I'm going to end this here, and then you can watch the video, and then we'll continue on finishing up the biological trait theory portion.